Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. This week I'm going to talk about lasers. Last week I talked about lights on weapons. This time I'm going to talk about lasers on weapons. This little Springfield Armory XDS in 45, and it has both. It has a light, as you can see here, and it also has a green laser. And you can select these, of course. There is just the light. There is just the laser. Now, lasers were once considered to be really nothing more than toys, but they've become standard equipment for a lot of military operators like Delta and SEAL teams, especially IR lasers, infrared lasers, which they use with their NODs, or night observation devices. The first laser kind of aiming device we saw was called a laser lock. And it was mounted under the barrel of an American 180 submachine gun. I'll show you a picture of this as we go along. It was the first to project a red dot onto the target. Now, from that giant device that hung under the barrel of that weapon, we now have tiny little LED lasers that are built directly into handguns. The original red dot lasers are now joined by green lasers, and I've even heard of some blue ones. And of course the infrared lasers that the military and law enforcement like to use. So these can be visible under a wide range of situations. So stick around. I'm going to talk about the practical uses of laser aiming devices and which might be the best for your needs. I want to announce to you that both versions of my book, Building a Better Gunfighter, are available now on Amazon.com. There's a Kindle book version of this for $9.95. There's the paperback copy for $19.95. Of course, sales tax is going to be added to both of those. Just search for Building a Better Gunfighter. As I said, the first laser aiming device out there was the one I've ever heard of, was called the laser lock, which was mounted under the barrel of an American 180. That's a .22 long rifle caliber submachine gun. A cool kind of a device. I got the chance to shoot one time. It has a flat drum magazine that holds 180 rounds of .22s. Now, as you can see in the picture here, the laser device was huge compared to tiny LED lasers that we have available today. The laser lock was recommended for uses in places like prison guard towers. And it was the first one to kind of introduce the concept of shining a laser device onto someone's chest, like this, red or green dot. And we see in the movies now all the time where, you know, there'll be a dot appear on somebody's chest and they look down and they kind of realize they can't wipe it away, and it's like, oh shit, I've been targeted. And you know, I think the psychological deterrent of that red dot is very real and probably pretty dramatic if you're the guy who sees one. I don't remember the movie one time, but at one image they had like 10 different laser dots kind of wandering around on a guy's chest, and then they just all converged into one big red dot, and he looked down and goes, okay, I give up. Now, the ultimate use of laser aiming devices, in my opinion, can be seen in movie like Zero Dark 30. This is where the SEAL team attacked the bin Laden compound. They're using infrared lasers, which means they're only visible through their night observation devices. So bad guys can't see the laser dots. The real reason for these things is when they're using those nods flipped down on their helmet, it's very difficult to use iron sights or red dot optics with those devices. So those IR lasers are best because they are brilliant under those night vision observation devices that they have. And it points to probably the most realistic use of a laser device If I am in some kind of position where I can't see the sights, maybe I've been knocked on my butt in a fight, if I can get that laser activated, the bullets are going to go where the laser goes. So I don't have to necessarily have a sight image. I don't even have to have that weapon up in my visual area. I can point that dot and know that I'm going to get a hit with what I need. These LED-made small laser aiming devices can now be mounted on all kinds of weapons. I mean, this is a rail mount green laser. The XDS has a rail mount. This is an Olight that's both, as I said, both a white light and a laser aiming device. Smith & Wesson currently makes 2 handguns that are factory fitted with lasers. The 38 Special Bodyguard revolver has a laser device attached to the kind of the top right side of the frame. A few months ago, my father-in-law, his wife had unfortunately passed away a year or so ago. She was adamant that there not be a gun in the house. That was just part of her makeup. But since she's gone now, he said, I'd like to have a little 38 or something in the house. You know, I don't necessarily live in a bad area, but bad things are starting to happen here. So we went to a local pawn shop. We found one of the 38 Special Bodyguard revolvers at a very friendly price. And the guy said, well, the laser doesn't work. But at that price, it was a bargain. I figured it was just batteries. So we got back, got a set of batteries for the laser. Still didn't work. And I had to wait a couple of months for it to come back into stock with Crimson Trace. Got a replacement, screwed it on the side. I think it was only 40 some bucks to replace the laser device, and he's back in business now. He's got both sights and a red dot laser for that. The other Smith & Wesson is the Bodyguard 380 semi-auto. And they sent this one to me a number of years ago when it first hit the market as a test gun. I liked it so much that I kept it. Definitely the smallest self-defense kind of handgun I have. You saw there that that's unloaded. And the red button there activates a red laser. And that laser is actually so small it's built inside the frame. Okay? And these lights, you can either do them solid on, or you can have a pulsing light with these Bodyguard lights. But that's how small they can make them now, is to actually put them inside of a gun. Here's another option, laser grips. This is just a unit on the top of the grips. This is for a 1911. Again, unloaded. This pistol has 2 slides. The one I carried as a police officer before I retired was a 45. It had night sights. This is a 38 Super slide, which will fire 38 Super or 9x23 ammo, and I also have a 9mm barrel for it. I don't have night sights on this. I have night sight in the front, but not in the rear. I added laser grips. Now, I took this Safe Queen lately out of the safe just a moment ago, and it doesn't activate. So apparently I need to put some new batteries in this. But this little unit here contains the laser. When this was made, the only thing they made laser grips to fit was a red laser. They now have that available in green. And we'll talk about the different colors as we go along. Now, most of the laser models, as I said, we've got some built into grips, some built into the frames. Most of the rest are Picatinny rail mount, and some of them include a white light with them, which I think can be pretty handy for some situations. Laser color. As I said, the first ones were red. Green lasers came about later, and because of the way the LED had to be built to work in the green wavelength, they were both larger and they were more expensive than the red LED models. Now we have green lasers about as small as the red ones, but they still tend to be more expensive. Apparently that kind of LED technology is more expensive to build. But green lasers have a definite advantage. They're much more visible under bright conditions. They're still tough to see in full daylight unless you're pretty close to your target. But as the light starts to dim down, the green will be the first one you're able to see clearly. The reason for that is they tell us that the human eye is about 6 times more sensitive to light in the green spectrum than it is in the red spectrum. So while both red and green have the same wattage power output, and in the United States, by law, these things have to be less than 5 milliwatts of light output. So while both red and green are less than 5 milliwatts, the green dot appears to be 2 or 3 times brighter than the red ones. And so that can be a real advantage for you. Now, like iron sights or red dot optics, the laser dot has to be zeroed to coincide with your bullet's point of impact. So you have windage and elevation screws on these weapons. Elevation, windage. Put a little Allen key in there and move them up and down as you need to. For handguns, I kind of like to zero my laser to match point of aim, point of impact with the iron sights at about 15 yards. You know, that's longer than most self-defense kind of situations, but it's not unreasonable at all. Now, there is always some degree of offset. Here's my line of bore, but here's my line of sight with that laser. So it's a couple of inches below where the bullet's going to impact at the muzzle. So when I say I zero for 15 yards, that means my line of my bore is level with my target at 15 yards, but that laser has to come up. It has to be aimed up to match that point out there at 15 yards. So generally these things sit below the line of sight. That means you're going to have to angle them up to get them zeroed in for handguns. So therefore, at any distance closer than your 0 point, the dot is going to be below the point of impact of your bullet. Now, with most handguns, this one is maybe 2 inches. This one is less. We're really, when the slide is closed here, we're really looking at about 1 inch below it. Now, 1 inch of difference up close as opposed to 15 yards is really negligible. There's no difference with that at all. For rifles, which are going to be used at generally longer distances than a handgun, a zero of either 50 to 100 yard makes more sense to me. Using a rifle for self-defense purposes beyond 100 yards, frankly, especially in the dark, you're probably going to need to explain yourself about why you're dealing with something that far out. But if someone's pointing a gun at you or firing a gun at you, distance doesn't really matter. There is the chance they could hit you. So let's look at a couple of rifles. Now here's an M4 carbine, empty. I have this light mounted to the sight, and it's kind of handy for me here because while I'm gripping that rifle, I can hit that momentary switch or the full on switch and be ready to go with that. I'm off to the side rather than below, a couple of inches. I can live with that. If that means if I'm going to zero it at, say, 100 yards, I'm pretty much going to be level with the bore because it's almost exactly the same. Do I really need to tweak that into the right to be on? Because past 100 yards, it's going to go further and further to the right as the distance increases. So I have actually got this one zeroed to be about 2 inches left of my point of impact. I just keep it parallel. And within a couple of inches out to 100 yards is not that big a deal. Now here's a lever action rifle. Again, empty. Now I'm below the bore, and I'm a couple of inches below the bore. This is an O-light, and this is one of those combo units again, with both a light and a green laser aiming device in there. So I can either angle that green laser up to match my point of impact at 50 yards or 100 yards, or I can just keep it parallel about 2 inches below the bore, and it's going to be that same distance off at any given distance from the muzzle all the way out. So that's an option of how you want to sight these things. Now, like all electronic devices, that you use for aiming, lasers use batteries. And batteries can fail sometimes when you need them most. So you need to keep a spare set of batteries handy and replace them often. I like to replace them once a year at minimum. When I was still active as a law enforcement officer, I replaced both my red dot sights and my flashlight batteries every 6 months. Plus, on that M4 carbine, I have a spare set of batteries in the pistol grip, a Magpul pistol grip with an insert. So I can replace them if I'm out long enough to wear out a set of batteries. I always had a spare set with me. Now, some of these combo units, like these Olights, are rechargeable. That can be an advantage because, you know, the 1, 2, 3 batteries that a lot of these things use are kind of expensive. But they do have a 10-year shelf life. If they sit around, they're still going to be good for quite a while. The disadvantage I see to the rechargeable is that if for some reason it gets bumped on and you don't realize it, then it's going to be dead when you need it, and recharging takes time, at least a half an hour or so to get enough of a charge to be usable. Now, I've seen some laser devices out there that emit blue light. I have not used one personally, so I can't speak to it. I don't know where blue falls into the sensitivity of our eyes, but red works well in any kind of dim to dark conditions. Green works in dim to even moderately light conditions. I'm not sure I need to mess around with blue. You know, I may see advantage to them someday. I prefer green because of their being more visible, seemingly brighter. So if green fits into your need, I do believe they do now have laser grips that come in green. The units are small enough to fit in that platform there. So if they fit for your needs and they fit into your price range, I prefer green. Red can work fine. Now, just like that original laser lock, using a laser device handheld can be kind of handy in some situations. You put that dot on someone's chest, and there's a bit of a pucker factor there. They're also handy for marking rabble-rousers. And we've seen that lately in some of the disturbances related to ICE and illegal aliens and things like that. Some of the police agencies have been putting officers up on high points. And they're using especially those green lasers to mark demonstrators in the crowd. When they realize that guy is the one who's stirring up all the trouble, he's the ringleader of trying to get trouble started, they'll put that green laser on him, and that marks for the street officers who they need to arrest. And that can really hone them in on the bad guy and hopefully prevent some of these minor riots that we're seeing from turning into major riots.
Oh yeah, raise the target. Raise the target, you nasty.
They're going after him. They're going after him. He's got the laser on him. He's running. He's running. Look at him go.
Now, the downside to lasers is when they are used by bad guys as a weapon. Our aiming lasers, as I said, we're restricted to an output below 5 milliwatts. There are some available on the internet, and they claim to have an output of 50,000 milliwatts, more than 10,000 times brighter than these things. I don't know if they're really putting out that kind of power. I don't really have any way to measure it. They are definitely much brighter than our weapon lights. Now, that much power can cause at least temporary blindness if you get it in the eyes, and probably permanent blindness with prolonged exposure. Some of those pointers have been used in the past. They've been shining them in the eyes of aircraft pilots, trying to hamper what they do on takeoff or landing. We have also seen Antifa and some groups shining lasers into police officers' eyes during demonstrations and riots.
Is every night that I've been here covering the protests, around 6 o'clock local time is when we start to hear the federal helicopter up in the air patrolling the ICE facility. What is interesting is we have not seen that federal helicopter tonight. And the reason, that could be a reason for it, is earlier we did confirm, and this is also through the Department of Homeland Security, they posted an Antifa flyer that was calling for far left-wing activists here in Portland to point their lasers at the direction of those federal helicopters, attempting to blind the view of those pilots. We saw also Portland police also issue out a warning the local authorities as well. And what's interesting is we haven't seen any of those federal helicopters at all. And that was scheduled, those lasers to be pointed at those helicopters around 9 o'clock local time. So we haven't seen any of those helicopters being flown by authorities.
Now, there has been some development of laser blocking face shields for police riot helmets. The problem with that technology is the ones that protect against green may not protect that well against red, and then there's blue being thrown into the mix as well. So while I know some companies have looked into color shading or whatever they need to do in the face shields to try to protect the police officer's eyes, that technology is still under development. And to my knowledge, it's not out there routinely for anyone. So, aiming lasers, they're not just a joke. The military uses them extensively for special operators and uses them with great effect. They can work for law enforcement. They can work for citizens as a way to aim your shots in dim conditions and a way to aim your shots when you're not able to get access to your sights, your red dot, or other way to aim. So this is what we got. It's kind of cool. It's not quite a Star Trek phaser, but maybe someday. And if we ever get those with stun settings, I'm going to use it a lot on people I don't like. Just a thought. Folks, if you find these videos worthwhile, I ask you to subscribe. Give me a like, share it around to your friends. Whatever you use to protect yourself out there, our society is dangerous, and it's not getting better yet. So arm yourself in the way you think you need, and you all be safe out there. Thank you. Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.